Welcome to the Business Blast podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Wagner. This episode is brought to you by Authors Unite. Authors Unite makes the process of becoming a published best-selling author as simple as sipping your morning cup of coffee. You can learn more about Authors Unite at authorsunite.com. Now, let's jump into the episode. All right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Business Blast podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Wagner. Today, I have Diane Voirin with us. She is a facilities and operations professional and the author of a children's book for little rhymers called Zummy of Umland. Though she has worked in corporate America for many years, she continues to find ways to write, such as newsletters, features, and briefly a byline history column for a small paper. She lives in Dallas with her husband and their 4 youngest children. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. I'm pumped to have you here. We'll dive right into the first one. The first question I have for you is, what is the best story from your life that has an underlying valuable message?
And I'm not sure if it's the best story from my life, but it is fresh in my mind. I switched jobs about a year ago, so I've been working in sales for a small general contracting firm. It's actually very different from what I've been doing for the last 2 decades, which is working for Fortune 500 companies, analyzing data and doing a lot of technical work and working with account teams. So what I did when I switched roles so drastically is I just kind of took a broad target approach and threw darts all over and tried to figure out what would stick. And one thing that I started doing was going to networking groups. And at one of the first networking group meetings I went to, I met a very young financial planner. Actually, he's about the same age as my oldest daughter. So I really wanted to help him grow his business. He seemed like such a genuinely good person. And I knew I had a large LinkedIn network at this point. So I set up a coffee meeting with him and I asked him questions and I gave him some referrals. I really tried to help him get going. And it was interesting because about a week after we met, he called me up and said he was working with a gentleman who had asked for or who needed a good general contractor. And he gave him my information. And to make a long story short, I met with this gentleman and called him and we had several meetings. And now we're actually going to build 3 new buildings for him and renovate 5. So this is the big sale that I've landed to date. And for me, the underlying message is when you're really out there trying to help other people and not necessarily even thinking about yourself, it's just so interesting. The more you try to help others, the more the generosity just flows back to you. It's so interesting to me how it's almost like the higher power tells you, well done. And it just rewards you with more than you could have ever expected. So I'm just always blown away by, I try to help others and they end up helping me more than I ever could have helped them.
Yeah, I always actually say giving is receiving. And I think it's if you're not so transactional about things, you just give, it does tend to come back to you and then some. So thanks for sharing that with us. The next one I have for you is, what is the most valuable piece of information we should know that's within your expertise or industry?
I would say sustainability. I would say be willing to spend a little bit more money and time up front researching and implementing environmentally friendly ideas. We do a lot of buildings, and I know that it's just really important. Think about your kids. Think about their kids. Think about the future, the world that we're leaving them. It really doesn't take that effort. There's so many little ways that you can work sustainability and better practices into the designs of things up front. Or you can even just volunteer your time. Just, buy a reusable straw. There's so many simple little ways, but sustainability, I think, is huge right now.
And what's your best piece of overall business advice? So not necessarily industry specific.
I would say in business, you're going to meet people. You're going to meet them all the time in all kinds of places. Take the time to remember their names and take the time to look them up on LinkedIn and look for profiles and see things that you have in common and make as many connections as you can. Genuinely try to help those people. I just think it's really important. There's so many good people that you meet, and the more you can connect with them and help them, and the more they can help you, I think it's really the best way to do business. is to just make connections and work with them.
And if you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would that be?
I would tell myself to try to find one way every day to do something good for someone else that they don't know about. I think when you do something without trying to get credit for it, it really builds your soul up and makes you a better person.
And in your opinion, what's the key to happiness?
I would say it's just really to make a decision to be happy. I mean, I could look at my life and say, wow, I'm in my 40s and I drive a 16-year-old Suburban. Or I can say, wow, I'm blessed with 5 great, happy, healthy kids, and I have an old Suburban that's big enough to cart them around. So it's just really a matter of perspective. I would say there's just so many wonderful things that we encounter every day, and we just need to look for them and not stay so focused on the little minutia that's really temporary.
And what is the best book that you've read, and what was the number one thing you learned from that?
I read all the time, so this was a really difficult question for me. But ironically, I think it's a children's book. I read it as a child myself, and I read it to my own kids. It's called The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein. And in it, the tree gives different things to the boy as he ages, from shade and apples and a little swing to play on to a stump to rest on when he's older. But it gives and it keeps giving, and it really spends its whole life just giving, and its happiness is measured by the wonderful feeling that it gets when it has something to give. So I just think that's an important thing to remember. The more you give, the more it helps them, but it also helps yourself. And
what is your favorite quote and why?
I also have a lot of favorite quotes, but one that I like is very simple. Watch the donut, not the hole. I grow lives. I mean, it's just so important to focus on the good stuff and the big picture and not get wrapped around the axle on all the little challenges that come up.
I love that. That's awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. The last one I have for you before we let you go is, where is the best place for people to find you online?
The best place to find me is LinkedIn.
Perfect. Thanks again for jumping on.
Yeah, thank you, Tyler.
The podcast you just heard was published with Anchor. Got something you want to say to the creator of this show? Send them a voice message using the Anchor app, free for iOS and Android.